Good morning. My name is Jim Watson. I'm the director of the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement at the U.S. Department of Interior. Welcome. It's with great pleasure that I welcome you to the first Offshore Energy Hurricane Preparedness and Response Forum. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all of you watching and participating through our webcast. This forum is part of BSEE's ongoing efforts to improve the safety of offshore oil and gas operations. Our highest priority at BSEE is safety at all levels and all times. This isn't just a slogan for us to put on bumper stickers. This is our guiding principle that drives the decisions that we make. Safety must come first and must be prioritized above all else. Preparing for and responding to hurricanes is a critical element of our goal of preventing accidents and spills on the outer continental shelf. Last month, President Obama issued a presidential proclamation in which he called upon government agencies, private organizations, and residents of coastal states to share information about hurricane preparedness and response in order to help save lives and protect communities. In his proclamation, the president reflected on the devastation of Hurricanes Sandy and Isaac. These plunged great cities into darkness, swept away homes into the sea, and tore families apart with the loss of lives. For those of us who work offshore, we must reflect on the 2005 hurricane season, one of the worst on record. In 2005, platforms toppled, pipelines were ripped from the seafloor, the damage from the storms halted oil and gas production in the Gulf for a prolonged period of time. We are gathered here to ensure that does not happen again. NOAA is predicting an active hurricane season. This forum is our opportunity to ensure that we are prepared and ready to respond. The people in this room represent government agencies, the oil and gas industry, environmental groups, and the Gulf states, mostly who are on the line via telephone call. The people, when it comes to hurricane preparedness and response, we are one team and we must work together. Working together is the best way to minimize the impact of storms on the supply of energy from the outer continental shelf. This is the first big effort to get all of our interests in the same room, and we're going to have the opportunity to hear from everyone here. First, we're going to learn about the 2013 hurricane forecast from NOAA. Then we will hear from both industry and federal government on preparedness activities. Following those presentations, we will learn about response plans on the outer continental shelf. And lastly, we will hear from the Gulf states' representatives. Once all the presentations are complete, I will lead a 45-minute public discussion forum. The Q&A session will be an important opportunity to hear from not only the people in this room, but also from people across the country participating through our webcast. We've never had such a comprehensive gathering of people responsible for hurricane preparedness and response on the outer continental shelf. The forum is an incredible opportunity to dialogue amongst ourselves and with the community. All of us in this room and watching on the web have the same goal: to minimize the impact of hurricanes and offshore energy supply. Working together as a team, we can accomplish that goal. I'm excited to get started with the presentations. Our first presenter is Catherine Sullivan, the Acting Undersecretary of Commerce for the Oceans and Atmospheric Administration. Thank you. Catherine?
Thank you, Jim. Thanks to you and your whole team at BSEE for bringing us all together here today for this forum. NOAA, as most of you know, consists organizationally of the National Weather Service, the National Ocean Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, NOAA Research, and NOAA Satellites. Today I'd like to look at that organization in a different way and show you a lens, look at it through the lens of environmental intelligence and unpack for you a little bit how we conduct ourselves and how we link to state and federal partners when we have hurricanes bearing down on our shores. The essence of NOAA, as I think of it, is to transform a transdisciplinary understanding of climate, weather, oceans, and coasts into what I call critical environmental intelligence. Timely, actionable, reliable information developed from authoritative science that gives us foresight about future conditions, that can inform the myriad decisions just like those we're talking about today. And just like intelligence in a national security sense, environmental intelligence requires a combination of data, information, analysis, modeling, and assessment. So today I'll touch on the ways in which NOAA's critical environmental intelligence provides this kind of foresight for the offshore industry, as well as for our partners in the federal family, the information that we all need to anticipate the wind, wave, and surge dynamics that can challenge safe operations, sometimes force the evacuation of ships, planes, and personnel, and that can, in subsequent landfall, affect ports, refinery operations, and land transport. Our long-term foresight for hurricane preparedness comes from the analysis of hurricane trends. Since the early 1970s, the numbers of Atlantic hurricanes have increased, have increased, as have major hurricanes within the time period. Much of this recent increase began in 1995 in the Atlantic Basin, when an oscillation called the AMO became active. This condition enhances the West African monsoon and creates circumstances in the atmosphere that are favorable to the formation of storms and to energizing storms as they move westward from Africa. The Atlantic Basin, in short, is set up to have an active season. Looking years to decades ahead, we seem to be on not the correct slide. There we go. Looking years to decades ahead, the 21st century climate projections show that there may be a decrease in the numbers of global tropical storms decades from now, but the intensity might also increase. We're continuing to research this problem and hopefully sharpen that outlook. The Atlantic Hurricane Outlook is one of the most important critical environmental intelligence products that we put out at NOAA. And I'll remind you that this year's 6-month hurricane season in the Atlantic Basin is predicted to be above normal, possibly extremely active, a season that may have 13 to 20 named storms with top winds at least 39 miles an hour. Of those 13 to 20, 6 to 11 we project will become hurricanes, top winds 74 miles an hour, and 3 to 6 of those hurricanes are projected to possibly rank category 3, 4, or 5, having winds greater than 111 miles per hour. These ranges reflect a lot of activity, and they are centered well above the seasonal averages, so our confidence of a highly active season is quite high. This outlook does not and cannot predict how many will make landfall or where they will make landfall. Any storm, should it hit our shores, can have a serious impact. The real message in the outlook is it's time to be ready for hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin. Since Katrina and Rita hit the Gulf Coast in 2005, we've made a lot of improvement in hurricane forecasting. This is all, again, thanks to continued and sustained investments in research. Compared to 2005, as these graphs show, the average track forecast error from NOAA's National Hurricane Center has decreased by 30 to 40%. So we're almost twice as good at telling you where the track of a storm will be. The average lead time for both hurricane and tropical storm watches and warnings have been extended by 12 hours since 2010. We now include formation probabilities as part of our tropical weather outlook. These came online 4 years ago, and they give you 10 and 20% probabilities of waves in the Atlantic Basin that have a likelihood of becoming a hurricane or a tropical storm. And we've added probabilistic storm surge information to the stream of data that come to you from the National Hurricane Center and our weather forecast offices. Outlooks, watches, warnings for tropical cyclones, all of these products are put out through NOAA's National Hurricane Center in Miami. Let me dig a little more deeply into how this flow works. You see on the left panel our tropical weather outlook showing areas of potential tropical cyclone formation. This is back from 2012. You'll see one named storm in the middle, that red storm symbol, and a bright magenta and yellow circle off to the lower right. That shows you an area of interest that may become a tropical storm. We issue these every 6 hours. They're derived from our geostationary satellite product. On the right, you see 4 days later, The wave that became Isaac is shown in that pink circle. So the reconnaissance that gives us the early advance warning of what we may have coming at us days down the road. Once a tropical cyclone forms, becomes a depression, the Hurricane Center begins to issue a complete advisory package every 6 hours. This advice includes a 5-day forecast of the depression's track and intensity, a 3-day out forecast of its radius, the radius of winds of different speeds, and the probability of tropical depression force sustained winds or tropical storm force or hurricane force winds over the next 5 days. Looking at how that played out for Hurricane Isaac, at 5 a.m. on 26 August last year, the Hurricane Center issued a hurricane watch for the mouth of the Mississippi to Indian Pass, Florida. A watch means hurricane conditions are possible somewhere in the watch area. And our goal and our practice is to issue these 48 hours before tropical storm force conditions are expected to begin. 12 hours later, the Hurricane Center issued a hurricane warning from east of Morgan City, Louisiana to Destin, Florida, including New Orleans. A hurricane warning means that hurricane conditions are expected, not possible, but now expected, somewhere in the warning area. And again, the warning is issued 36 hours before the area may experience even tropical storm force winds. Out at sea, safety on rigs, platforms, and ships is informed by products delivered through the Hurricane Center's Tropical Analysis Forecast Branch, or TAFB. This branch operates 365 days per year, whether we're in hurricane season or not. When a depression is detected, the basic sea state analysis shows up as part of the forecast advisory package. 12-foot seas, which are a critical threshold for mariners and maritime decision-making, are indicated in the complete hurricane advisory package. High seas forecasts for the Gulf of Mexico are updated every 6 hours. Again, this is after the formation of a depression. This forecast includes a description of winds and waves for the current time, a nowcast of what's happening there now, and a 24 and a 48-hour forecast of the winds and waves. In this product, a 20-knot threshold is used for wind and an 8-foot threshold for seas, and positions and intensities are given for tropical cyclones out to the 120-hour forecast. We also produce offshore waters forecasts that extend from the shore out several hundred nautical miles. These provide a general overview of the large-scale environmental marine conditions, winds, seas, and major weather impacts, again, out to 5 days. Marine warnings such as gale warnings or warnings for tropical storms and hurricanes are headlined for each affected zone in the broad area through the first 36 hours. All of these products are available in graphical and text formats, and many of the TAFB products can be accessed via high seas radio fax on upper sideband. The local weather service offices through all of this evolution are communicating with the oil and gas industry, typically through state and local emergency management channels. But let me tell you a little more about the comms that are happening during this critical phase, because this is where, as we were discussing before coming down to the hall, it's good to have plans and it's good to know what's going to be printed on paper, but rich two-way communication is just as critical during these evolutions. I need to not only know as NOAA that you got or read what we put out in our forecast, but I really want to prevent casualty, prevent harm. So I also want to know you understood it, you know what we mean, and we can correct or refine that understanding as you might need to do so for your decisions. So during these high impact situations, our local forecast office hosts daily weather calls for emergency managers and state partners. These interactions improve our understanding of the industry's needs and the overall impacts of our products and watches and warnings. And we adapt on the fly when we get feedback from these conversations. When a hurricane warning is issued, again, warning means hurricane conditions are expected in the area. Then the local forecast office ups the ante and begins to issue a hurricane local statement. This now provides detailed local impacts of the storm to county warning areas, along with wave heights and winds in the marine zones. The emergency manager partner calls continue, and the Weather Service's New Orleans office pilot project on emergency response specialists kicks into gear with their catalog of specialized impact thresholds defined by their interactions with the industry. I think we've touched that. Let me talk a bit about storm surge and offshore conditions. When we've stepped into tropical storm warning, another source of information for both our decision-making partners and our industry partners to look for is the Ocean Service's Storm Quick Look product. This comes online and contains GIS-ready information updated 4 times each day, more frequently as storms come near landfall, that fuse marine, wind, wave, and surge information onto one convenient point and give you the opportunity to see what the actual conditions are at the sentinel sites that we have all along the coast. You see those sentinel sites in red on this graphic as the active stations, and the inset on the left shows you what one of them looks like out at sea. Whenever we have a hurricane watch or warning in effect for the U.S. Gulf or East Coast, we also begin to produce probabilistic storm surge products. You see one of those here. This shows probability of a storm surge of different heights in various colors. It's a technically rich product. We have found over the years it's difficult for many operators and decision-making partners to understand, so we're moving over the next few hurricane seasons to a graphical inundation product more like this one. This is NOAA's Sea Level Rise and Coastal Flooding Viewer. If you look at the dialog box on the left, you'll see a horizontal bar with a triangle in it. This is an interactive tool that lets you, the user, swipe back and forth and evaluate for any particular location that's pertinent to you what a surge or flood level of some magnitude might mean. What will be underwater, what will be under how much water, how will that actually translate into an impact that you need to account for. Funky clicker here. Our work in storms, I just want to highlight as I close, goes beyond the wind, wave, water, tide, surge forecasts prior to landfall. NOAA is also the nation's, the federal government's lead response entity for oil spill response. We are responsible for the precise geodetic mapping of our coastlines and shorelines, and we are natural resource trustees. So all of those functions swing into gear immediately after storm passage. Our navigational response teams kick into gear in ports and harbors to resurvey waters and pierside locations and ensure that ports and harbors can open as rapidly as possible. Maritime commerce, fuel supplies can commence as soon as possible. Our aircraft fly precise LiDAR and photogrammetric surveys over damaged coastal areas. These are fed directly online to our national response partners such as FEMA, and even out now to mobile apps. We saw tremendous uptake of this in the wake of Hurricane Sandy, when both first responders and even citizens from the affected communities were able to pull up images within hours after the storm passed of affected coastlines and begin to triage where they needed to put their efforts, where they could stage gear, and for families and business owners, begin to process and understand what condition they were going to return to when they were let back into the area. So yes, NOAA is the National Weather Service, and I know that's our biggest face when we're talking hurricane conditions, but we remain on the team and working right alongside with our other federal partners here at the table, also in the aftermath of a storm for many, many days and weeks once the storm is through. So from the annual outlook to the sea state and storm surge forecasts and then the response afterwards, what we are all about, what we aim to do, is to provide this critical environmental intelligence. We aim to make sure it's technically sound, scientifically valid, and reliable, but more than that, it is most critical that we know that we're making it timely, actionable, reliable, pertinent to your needs. It needs to be information that helps you build answers to your questions, not just information that we have at hand. So we welcome this dialogue, and again, Jim, we thank you very much for convening it. We look forward to hearing from the rest of our federal partners and our state partners about anything more that we can do to help us all be ready for this and future hurricane seasons. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and I want to re-emphasize your point. It's how important it is for us to know all of the planning and to have the confidence that NOAA is on our team and providing that environmental intelligence. So thank you very much to you and your entire organization. Our next speaker is from the Department of Energy. William Bryan is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Infrastructure, Security, and Energy Restoration. Bill?
Thanks, Jim, and thank you for hosting, for the Department of Interior for hosting this event, and also to my distinguished colleagues up here at the table, and I look forward to hearing from all of you and taking some questions later on. I often tell my staff, if you can't put out the fire, we have to shape the forest. All right, we can't control the kind of events that are going to hit us, but we have to shape the way we respond to these events, and we have to be flexible because we're not going to be able to stop them. And in 2005, as Jim mentioned earlier in regards to Rita and Katrina, we lost 100% of our ability to drill offshore. We lost 80% of our refining capacity in the southeast, and we lost electricity to the landmass the size of 3 states. All right, that was enormous. All right, and it took approximately, from the energy side, it took approximately 4 months to recover from that event. 4 months. But industry stepped up. Industry took some steps, took some hardening activities, and other resiliency initiatives. And when Ike and Gustav hit 3 years later, we had a very similar impact. But it took half the time to recover, 2 months. All right, 2 months. So I salute industry and frankly, the Gulf Coast states. They've been through this once or twice, and from the energy perspective, they're very equipped. However, in every one of these events, we learn lessons. We learned a lot of lessons in Sandy. And I can assure you that they will be better prepared up in the Northeast should something like that happen again. But a lot of the lessons that we learned, frankly, are grouped in categories as such that we can almost anticipate and expect what some of the problems are going to be. There was always going to be legislative and regulatory issues during every event because not all state laws line up just perfectly for a good response, at least from the energy perspective. Some laws prohibit quick restoration, some allow it. A lot of waivers are granted to enable a faster restoration, but these are all issues that we have to deal with each and every time there's an event. There are also policy and process issues that we have to deal with. The handling of mutual assistance teams, the communication of restoration timelines. We work very closely with our industry partners. We have the capability to see in near real time the outage numbers as they come in. And we're able to see the movement and the availability of fuels and electricity through our situational awareness tool. And we only are able to do that through partnering with the utility industry. But there's a communication flow that also has to occur between the industry and between the customers, right? And industry's gotten this message, and I can tell you that the electric industry in particular is working very close now to make sure they communicate that message to local communities. It's very important for a mayor to know that if electricity is going to come back on at a certain substation, what that energizes. And we're working very close to make sure that communication path is open, that community leaders recognize how quickly they will be receiving electricity so they can plan accordingly to take care of their local community and their citizens. All right. We also realize that in every event that many communities don't often prepare by identifying what's critical to them. All right. This is an important takeaway, is that communities need to be preparing now to identify those critical assets within their communities that are important to them. A lot of work can be done, and we're doing a lot of work right now with utilities in other parts of the country, identifying what's critical to these local communities as far as assets, resources, hospitals, high-rise apartment buildings, water treatment facilities. And these utilities are working closely with communities now to be able to reconfigure their distribution grid to be able to get power to those critical assets. And this is, again, an activity that has occurred in the Gulf Coast region. And in fact, hopefully in the near few weeks, I'll be making a trip out there to talk to all the utilities regarding this hurricane season that we're in right now to make sure those kind of activities are ongoing. I mentioned mutual assistance. For those who don't know, all utility companies have mutual assistance agreements with other utility companies in other states. And they're contracted relationships, and when something happens, they're able to bring these resources in from out of the state to be able to help them. I will tell you that the last hurricane that hit the Gulf Coast, I want to believe it was Isaac, if I've got that right, it was a very quick response. And they had, at that time, for the amount of the impact, I want to say 17,000 mutual assistance teams rolled into Louisiana. And it was one of the fastest responses we've seen as far as getting electricity restored. 90% was restored in 3 days. That's incredible. Those are incredible numbers, all right? And it's all due to the communications and the interaction that the industry has in preparing for these kind of events. So in addition to the legislative and regulatory, in addition to the policy and process issues, there's also the need to harden equipment. And industry, as I mentioned before, have taken a lot of steps, especially in the Gulf Coast region, to be better prepared for these events going forward in the future by engaging in a lot of hardening activities, as well as changes in their own procedures that'll enable them to restore both the oil, gas, and electricity systems much more quickly. So with all this going on, with what industry is doing, what are we doing? Industry's taken, the Department of Energy has taken, the spotlight's been on us for a long time. Because once people are taken care of and the citizens are housed, they're fed, they're sheltered, a lot of attention is given to the energy side. How quickly can we restore? How long are we going to be without gasoline, right? Who's going to start running out first? These are all the questions that start coming our way. And frankly, it takes a lot of resources to do that. I have a team of about 80 volunteers stretched across the DOE complex that I use to man and staff the regional coordinating centers out in the field, all right? But for this hurricane season, we're actually establishing, and we always have had an energy response center in DOE. It's been much smaller. We are expanding that. We've actually acquired extra space, and currently in the budget, we have a placeholder in there to actually build a state-of-the-art operations center within the Department of Energy called the Energy Resiliency and Operations Center, and we look forward to being able to do that hopefully for next hurricane season. But in this hurricane season, we're able to secure some extra space and largely to house a lot of extra partners that previously we did not bring into the operations center. Some of the lessons we learned, especially from Sandy, is there was a lot of senior level involvement. Senior level involvement is good, but senior level involvement has to be the appropriate senior level involvement. And it has to feed into the national response framework and the incident command system that is structured and in place so that all parties have access to the information being shared and the direction that's being given out. So that is something that was recognized, and we are taking a lot of steps to make sure that that information, those decisions made at the highest level, get put into that system and get communicated out to the rest of the interagency. Another thing that jumped out after Sandy was the fact that we need to have industry representation in our operations center. We've been very comfortable to this point to be able to reach out and make phone calls and have that interaction. But during Sandy, for example, we had, at least the electric utilities were represented in the Energy Task Force at FEMA, and that proved very valuable. The utilities were able to get resources very quickly to be able to get restoration going much faster. And that was due to that team. We are actually having an energy response team established, but that team is going to be established at the Department of Energy as opposed to FEMA headquarters. And we've reached out to the electricity, oil, and gas sectors, and they have all volunteered to provide representation in that ops center for whatever time we need them. And our plan is to run that ops center 24/7, or at least keep the same schedule as the NRCC Operations Center in Washington, D.C. headquarters. So in addition to having the industry representation, we have a lot of offers from the interagency to be part of that. So we are reaching out to our interagency partners, especially key partners that we have a lot of interaction with, and make them part of that team as well. Because the requests coming in for us now, and the request for information and data and tactical analysis has exceeded drastically just in the last few years. All right, and so with the help of industry, with the help of our interagency partners, and with our core capability within the Department of Energy, I believe we're going to be able to turn around some much more quicker and tactical technical analysis that we need to provide for decision makers to make the kind of decisions they need to make, and be able to provide to the communities and to the nation the potential impacts of the disaster that's pending. So I just want to thank you once again for the opportunity to speak today. I look forward to the questions, And I also want to take that opportunity to extend a special thank you to our interagency partners for their willingness to work with the Department of Energy and walk side by side as we go through this next hurricane season. So thank you very much.